Hello and welcome to the show. I've got 3 more cars for you on today's Tuner Thursday. We start with a Ferrari 355 from Dr. Tony X. I do like the 355. It's maybe not the most iconic of the Ferraris, I'll be honest, but it's a nice sounding, a good looking. In fact, it kind of, when you think of an Italian supercar, this is kind of the image that gets conjured up in your head, to a certain extent at least. And it's a very nice driving car, certainly from standard, so I was interested to see what it could do on this particular challenge. As far as specifications go, well, it has the almost obligatory 500 horsepower for this series, 508 in this particular car, perhaps a little bit down on torque to some of the other vehicles, only 365, and it weighs a little bit more than I expected, 2,813 pounds. Yeah, it's a little bit heavier. I'm guessing compromises were made to keep the car within A-class. I'm assuming this is running racing tyres, and because of that, you couldn't have sort of full-on weight reduction, otherwise the PI would go a little bit high. That's my assumption here, as it is, yeah, a little bit on the heavier side than I expected from the Ferrari. When it comes to the corners, this is a very nice car to drive. It almost feels as if it's four-wheel drive. That's how much sort of grip and traction you get out of this vehicle. It really does feel as if it's four-wheel drive, booting it out of some of these corners. It has an awful lot of grip. I think there was one slide through a corner you saw just a little bit before. That was about the only time I got this car sideways. That's it. It is a remarkably planted car. Again, for 500 horsepower rear-wheel drive Italian supercar, that's pretty damn impressive, I have to say. It's a really very, very well-behaved car. I mean, there's no aero parts on it either, as you can clearly see. It's incredibly well behaved. It's a fun car to drive as well. Easy to get it through the corners because it just doesn't want to misbehave. I mean, sure, if you clonk a curb, you're going to slide it a little bit. And this corner here, where the track sort of starts to fall away on the exit, yeah, you will slide it a little bit. But again, it's another one of these cars. It doesn't really want to slide. It wants to just put the power down and get out of the corners, which, yeah, for a rear-wheel drive, okay, it probably helps. You know, it's a mid-engine car. We've got a fair bit of the weight over the rear, but you know, it still does very, very well. Yeah, as I said, it very much feels as if it's four-wheel drive. It isn't. It just kind of feels as if it is. That's the level of grip that you get from the car. Straight line speed is also fairly impressive. It was getting towards the 160 mile an hour mark after the start-finish straight, and brakes were not too bad. I mean, they weren't sort of breathtakingly good on this car. They weren't up to the same sort of braking forces you got from the ACR Viper. That would do sort of getting onto the 160 mile an hour mark and be braking at the 400 meter board into turn 1. You couldn't do that with the 355. You were going about the same speed, you were braking at the 500 meter board, but that's what we're seeing from a lot of cars. Not many cars can get away with braking as late as the Viper could, so the brakes were respectable on this. There we go, I hit a curb and got things a little bit slidey into the first few corners. Yeah, just overall a nice, pleasant car to drive, remarkably easy for an Italian supercar. Yeah, it was a lovely car to get around the track. Up next we go from a car that felt like it was four-wheel drive to a car that very much is. Nissan Skyline R34 from HLR Juggernaut. Now, regular viewers of this channel will know that I am much more of a muscle car person. I do like my muscle cars, and I'm not a massive fan, don't massively obsess over the Japanese cars. However, I do like the R34 Skyline. It is certainly my favourite of the Skylines, and yeah, I do quite like this particular car. Now, when we look at the specifications for this one, it is the most powerful car we have here today. 584 horsepower, has a sizable amount of torque as well, 537 foot-pounds of it. So we've got a lot of power, a lot of torque. It is also, amazingly, the lightest car here today, 2,741 pounds. Not the lightest car we've seen, no, but it's lighter than the Ferrari, which I didn't expect. I expected the Skyline to be a bit of a heavier beast. In all honesty, it's a bit of a bigger car, and of course it's four-wheel drive. But no, it's not too bad on the weight. I am assuming that you could fit the full-on weight reduction onto this car, and maybe has smaller tyres. I'm assuming again that this one is probably running on some race tyres. You can see it's got certainly got aero on the rear of the car. I think it might have front aero as well. It's another car that's It's an easy one to drive. It's four-wheel drive, so you're always going to be able to put down as much of the power as you want pretty much all of the time with a car like this. Even with all of the power and all of the torque, you turn it into the corner, you boot it, or once you've got it slowed down enough, you boot it, and then it'll sort itself out. It's pretty damn easy to drive in that respect. It will just slide a little bit. You will notice it a few times around the course of these laps that I'd filmed. The back end will just start to want to move around a little bit. It never becomes sort of really oversteery. It never becomes sort of full-on slides in this car. It's just one of those. It's just teetering on the edge of having a big oversteery moment, but it never really does. There's only sort of a couple of puffs of smoke here and there as the car, it wants to slide a little bit, but it actually doesn't. Which is, it's certainly easy for me to drive. I don't want the car sliding around, so I will take that. Again, another car that was very good on the straight line speed, getting up towards the 160 mile an hour mark. In fact, I think it was about 163 miles an hour in the Skyline. It was pretty damn quick in a straight line. Braking was about the same as the 355. You were braking at about the same point. Down the start-finish, down the sort of start-finish straight up towards the first or second corner, depending on if you count the kink on the straight as a corner or not. Again, another car that was, it was pretty easy to drive, this one. You had got to remember to brake just a little bit earlier than I would perhaps used to with some of the super light cars. Again, with both this and the Ferrari, caught me out a couple of times. You just got to brake it a little bit earlier because they've got such good acceleration. They've got such good straight line speed. You were going very, very quick into the corners with them. You also got to be careful with the curbs. The Skyline did not like the curbs. There are a couple of times, I don't think I actually filmed them, but there were a couple of times I hit some curves, certainly through here. Threw the car a long way on two wheels. Wasn't quite as bad as the F50, but it was certainly getting up towards that. Yeah, the Skyline was not a particular fan of the curbs. And our final vehicle for the day comes from Integra R with a BMW Z4. There's another car that I think perhaps gets forgotten a little bit when it comes to Forza 5. Certainly, I don't think I have driven one of these before this. Never really paid a huge amount of attention to them. Nothing wrong with the Z4 as such. It's just not a car that I particularly think about when it comes to Forza. So I thought it would be an interesting one to see how it goes. Now this one has got fairly similar figures really to the Skyline. I believe the Z4 and the Skyline were running the same 5.7 litre V8 that had been bought out to a 6 litre. I think that's the engines that both of these are running. BMW 563 horsepower, so it's slightly down on power from the Skyline, but has 563 torque, so a little bit less power, a little bit more torque. It is the heaviest of the three cars, 2,966 pounds. I mean, all of these vehicles have weighed on the fairly similarly between the sure that's English between the three of them. So a little bit lower power, a little bit more torque from this car. It is rear-wheel drive, and it is perhaps the most difficult of the three cars to get around the track, but it's not by much. I mean, it's not a ridiculous, ludicrously tough car to drive, this one. It does just want to spin its wheels up out of a few corners. Certainly the first section around the roundabout, it does like to sort of spin its wheels. It does like to slide a little bit. Again, a little bit like the Skyline, it never really has properly huge slides from it. I mean, you will get this a lot more sideways than you would get the Skyline if you're really pushing it. But it never has really massive oversteery, slidey, scary moments unless you clip a curb, and then it does them, which is always interesting. Around Long Beach, which I think we're about to do around here, just run the inside a little bit too much, and then everything goes sideways and goes a little bit wrong. No cars like running the curves particularly. I got away with it that time round. It's just one of these that you just waste just a tiny little bit of time here and there, it wanting to spin up its rear wheels. Straight line speed was again pretty damn quick. It was around the similar marks to the rest of the cars, 160 mile an hour. Brakes were a little better on the BMW. It wasn't quite at the 400 meter board you were braking, but it was just a little bit later than the 500. It was quite scary, I will be honest, with this car, just making sure you get it stopped. It was kind of sort of the 450 meter mark that I was aiming for that first big stop, and it would do it. It was one of those where your brain is shouting at you that you've been a moron, but it would pull up in time. You could carry some decent corner speed with this car as well, if you got everything right, if it wasn't trying to spin the wheels up and certainly me fearing for my life. Yeah, a tiny fractionally bit oversteer. It wasn't twitchy. Just yeah, you got to be aware of the little bits of oversteering. Got rather close to the wall on that particular one, but yeah, I mean, I'm just nitpicking with it. It wasn't particularly tough car to get used to, particularly tough car to drive. I did have a few problems with locking up the brakes. I'm not sure if brake pressures were altered or brake balance was altered in this car. For whatever reason, there were quite a few earlier runs that I were having real problems with getting the car stopped. I was just locking up the brakes far too much in this, so yeah, I'm not sure if something was slightly altered somewhere, but yeah, that was probably my biggest problem in getting used to the car. Anyway, on to the times, and it is the Skyline that splits the Ferraris at the top with a 124.203. That's a very quick time from the Nissan. Yeah, I'm not massively surprised that car goes towards the top. It was a very easy car to drive, and you could put a lot of power down all of the time in that thing. So yeah, not massively surprised to see that right at the top. A little further down, we find the BMW Z4 in 8th, the 125.174. Yeah, just a little bit of time was wasted in the spinning up of the wheels. Brakes were quite nice. I did occasionally get a little twitchy under brakes, but on the most part, yeah, the brakes were pretty nice on the Z4. Again, another car that wasn't too hard to drive. And in 10th, we find the Ferrari 355, a 25.307. Again, another pretty quick lap time from that car. Perhaps didn't quite have the torque, didn't quite have the acceleration of the other two. But still, you know, a remarkable, really, to say a 500 horsepower rear-wheel drive Italian supercar was feeling almost as if it was four-wheel drive. That's the amount of traction you got from it, which I think is, yeah, that's pretty damn impressive. Anyway, that is it for this week's Tuner Thursday. We're only going to be accepting submissions for cars over the next couple of weeks, and then I will close entries. So if you're going to want to build a car for this, you might want to get a move on to submit your vehicles. You go to our forum. There will be a link in the description under the Forza 5 on the official events section. There will be a Forza 5 bit, and in there is where you can enter your cars, and all the rules and so on can be found in that thread as well. However, that's it from me, so thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.